Para-Occupational or take-home exposure. Lead exposure is an occupational hazard for workers in the construction industry, but it may also be a hazard for their families. It is all too easy for workers to accidentally take lead home on their clothes, skin, hair, and tools, where it can cause lead poisoning in their spouses, children, or other family members. This type of secondary exposure is called para-occupational or take-home exposure. While take-home exposures have been documented in industries, evidence exists to suggest that para-occupational lead exposure could be the most serious among families of construction workers. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health or NIOSH conducted a study of bridge workers and their families to gather more data regarding para-occupational lead exposure in the construction industry. When NIOSH investigators tested for lead on workers' skin and in their cars following a day of abrasive blasting on a lead paint-covered bridge, they found lead on the hands and faces of most workers and inside every single car. It is interesting to note that workers who had the highest occupational lead exposure during the workday typically had low levels of lead in their cars. Workers who had low levels of lead exposure during the workday tended to have higher concentrations of lead in their cars. OSHA's lead standard for the construction industry specifies several measures employers must take to prevent the spread of lead off the work site. Owners, managers, and supervisors should be educated in the dangers of take-home exposure and should encourage workers to follow proper hygiene practices. Workers should be educated on the health effects of lead exposure for themselves and their families, and work as partners with the employer to implement and adhere to best practices for preventing the spread of lead off construction work sites.